I think that the idea of incentive auctions, I think the fact that that this was passed by Congress after a very concerted effort, I think it's intellectually it's fascinating. I am an enormous proponent of rethinking our national spectrum utilization. I think we should do it not just once. I think it should be an iterative and continual process. This shouldn't be the beginning and end of something. We should always be trying to find the best way to deploy these very, very important assets. I do think the biggest mistake that the FCC, and this goes more to the policy panel, I'll keep it very short. I think the biggest mistake the FCC made here is that in asking the question, how do we get more spectrum into a service where the use is higher and better, they never really looked at broadcasting and said, hey, we're going to be doing a lot of work here. How do we make broadcasting better? Is broadcasting a service that matters? Is it something that people care about? Is it something that's useful in the national interest? Are the problems and issues that we've identified with broadcasting that we attribute to inefficient spectrum usage? I'm not saying I do that. I'm saying that's part of the thinking behind the proponents of this process. Are some of those issues actually the result of government regulation and not of inefficient functioning of the marketplace or anything that consumers have chosen or not chosen? So what does flexible use mean, right? We want to reallocate from command and control to flexible use so that we can find the highest and best use for the spectrum. What does flexible use mean? If once we make our allocation decisions, we are in effect, there's no such thing as entire flexible use, because when we make our allocation decisions, we're really making them with a particular use in mind. And all of the allocations that are proposed in this NPRM really have in mind the idea of a two-way mobile broadband service. I mean, there are many, many different ways to use spectrum, and they have different technical requirements. And so the idea that we're going to go from command and control to flexible use, well, we're allowing flexibility in some things, but really we have in mind we want to reallocate from television broadcasting to mobile broadband. Now I'll get off my high policy horse and say I think this is a great process. I think we ought to do it across many services, and we ought to do it iteratively, and we should also put under the microscope the way in which spectrum is deployed by the carriers that today, in popular belief, are making the highest and best use of the spectrum. And I think some of the unlicensed proponents would probably say the same thing. A few things that I think broadcasters care about in this process. Number one, I think a lot of broadcasters have expressed to me that they're concerned that the tenor of the item is that the FCC wants to maximize the amount of spectrum that is reclaimed rather than sort of reclaiming the right amount, whatever the market wants. Number two, I think broadcasters that do choose to participate in the auction want to be sure that there is transparency in the auction, that they understand what's going on, they understand what may or may not happen to them, and that, and although it's difficult to achieve, that there is a quality and transparency for everybody for all broadcasters who participate in the process, and that gets into things like how the various bids are scored, a very complicated thing to do.